Okay, we can get started. Thank you for coming to the CBCS seminar. Today we have Liz Foote from Griffith, but she's an American who spent 2 decades, I find that hard to believe, in Hawaii, which is the most beautiful place in the world. Tahiti, Hawaii, it's up there. So she's spoiled, and she is now at Griffith, where she's a research fellow in social marketing. She has a BS in ecology, behavior and evolution, and MS in science education, and just finished her PhD in interdisciplinary environmental sciences. And I think she's also part of social marketing at Griffith, which is something that people can engage with. And I suspect you're going to tell us about how to engage with it. Yeah. Okay, cool. And since Griffith is on the same land that we're currently on, Liz has offered you the acknowledgement of country. So with that, I'll hand it over. Thank you.
Thank you. So thanks everyone for having me today. It's an honor to come across the river and meet a new crew of folks. Some people may have met, but as we get underway, I just want to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on behalf of Griffith and as well today, and then pay respects to elders past, present, emerging, send that to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. So a little bit of background on myself. As we've heard, I am American. I lived and worked in Hawaii for 20 years, and my background is in natural sciences. And I did a lot of community engagement, marine conservation. I was a practitioner all those years, doing things like citizen science, environmental education, and helping the academic community connect with the local community there on Maui, where I was based. And my introduction to social marketing came in 2013, and I had never heard of the term social marketing before, but I was recruited to be on a steering committee focused on a project to reduce land-based pollution that was affecting coral reefs. My area of focus was coral reefs and watershed stewardship. So I was recruited to help out with that. And as part of that project, we did a lot of things like have public pledges and commitments, branding, and recognition for businesses that took steps to reduce their pollutants, and also individuals on an individual basis, how people were reducing their water use and things like that using native plants, all these things, storytelling, social norms. And that was my introduction to social marketing. And I was like, this is really cool. And for those who aren't familiar with social marketing, because it always bears a little bit of explanation, and I'll get into it more later. It's basically taking social behavioral sciences and bringing that together with traditional marketing and advertising practices. And we know that stuff works, right? And so it's using it for good. And I also need to clarify what social marketing is not, because it came about before the term social media. So everyone thinks like I did my PhD in Facebook, and no, I did not. So it's not social media or social advertising or education and outreach or strategic communications, but all those things could be part of social marketing initiatives depending on what the research tells you is required. So yeah, the whole thing about marketing, a lot of times you'll find people who do social marketing don't even call themselves social marketers because of the perceptions, but marketing is really powerful and it's grounded in psychology and science and research. So again, we're using it for good. And so this is back like over a decade now, and I wanted to learn more about it. It's a whole field and discipline. So I went and I learned from workshops and online courses and stuff and really immersed myself in this. I wanted to switch up my whole approach because I thought this is what we should be doing in conservation and taking that kind of approach. And one thing I'll recommend if you're interested is go check out Doug Mackenzie Moore's website, cbsm.com. There's a lot of great case studies, examples, forums, you can meet other people. And this is the book that really did it for me. There's all these cool environmental sustainability type project case studies outlined in that book. So I thought, okay, this is it for me. I'm gonna just pick up, go from Hawaii, get my PhD and become a social scientist. So that's what I did. I went and got my PhD and I looked at the discipline as a whole, sort of broadly, and how it's adopted and diffused and implemented within environmental settings. Because it started out in public health and it's just more recently since the 90s, getting into the environment space. And then I ended up 3 years ago finishing, and here I am in Australia. So it's been great. I haven't left. I'm not planning to leave anytime soon. And at our center, Social Marketing in Griffith, we have a number of projects that are conservation focused. You can see here, and you can check out more about all these if you'd like, from all sorts of different species to habitats and so forth. The one I'm working on primarily is the koala threat mitigation project, and I'll get into that later. I have quite a lot of slides, and as you see here, who is at ICCB? And probably a lot of you. So this is how I ended up here today. She recruited me. I put on a workshop that was an hour of the intro to conservation marketing. And it was like a whole day's worth of stuff sort of crammed into that hour. And now I'm going to try to cram in that hour into 20 minutes. So just wish me luck. But yeah, basically I wanted to give folks who weren't familiar with social marketing an overview, because I was like many of you potentially, if you're in the environment space and conservation, I didn't know anything about this. I wasn't immersed in social science, but I thought this is what we need to be doing in addition to the research we're doing, like in the conservation space. So that's some technical stuff about what social marketing is. This is the International Association and their definition. It seeks to develop and integrate marketing concepts with other approaches to influence behaviors that benefit individuals, communities for the greater social good. And the 6 principles, core concepts here around the 1 principle about facilitation of personal and social good: explicit social goals, critical thinking, reflexivity, being ethical, competition, barrier, and asset analysis, citizen orientation or audience orientation and focus, value proposition delivery, we have a social marketing intervention mix, theory, insight, data, and evidence informed audience segmentation. So this is all kind of marketing stuff. And there are also benchmarks that sort of set it aside, like this is how it's different from other disciplines. And I'm not going to get into a lot of detail on that, but there's a 2-pager you can check out if you're interested. But the segmentation is really key. We don't have like general audiences. You really tailor your interventions. The competition part too, that's where we have to kind of see what's out there competing for your audience's interest and time. And also we do what's called competitive analysis. We look and see how are other groups and are trying to address the issues that are out there. And the exchange, that's that whole what's in it for me. And that, a lot of these things are key to marketing. So figuring out like what will make a difference for someone to take action for behavior change, and figuring out how to tip that balance in the favor of doing the behavior versus whatever the competing behavior is. And the marketing mix, I had never heard of the 4 Ps. So if you're familiar with marketing, that's foundational. So learning some of this stuff is really helpful to me, coming in from like a natural science background, looking at like how you structure your interventions, the product, what it is you're trying to get people to do, and actual things you're trying to like, have them take up and use. The price, and that can be monetary or non-monetary, like your time is the cost. So how do you reduce that cost? The place, like where the behavior is taking place, and then promotion, all those various channels of media you might be using to get the word out. And then the social marketing has gone beyond. The 4 Ps are still foundational marketing, of course, but there's other frameworks and multiple Ps and letter associated frameworks and stuff out there that's really become more holistic and how you actually go about doing your interventions. And a little bit of the history. So the field, the academic side of it came about in the 60s and 70s with like the seminal paper there in 1971. It had started out in the public health domain, for family planning, that kind of stuff. And then in the 90s, Doug Mackenzie Moore started doing this in the environment space and using environmental psychology. And then 2015 was when the paper came out that established conservation marketing. And it's also a working group of Society for Conservation Biology. Is anyone part of it? No, you can be if you're interested. So you'll see my email at the end. Just email me and connect you to the crew. There's actually a virtual conference in early December that's conservation marketing. So if this is intriguing to you, like my goal today is just very broad overview, get people excited about it, let you know it exists. And Diogo Verissimo, he's one of the people from that paper, and he's sort of like got the gold standard of work if you're interested in checking it out, some of his work using social marketing, environmental social marketing for biodiversity conservation. So I'm gonna go through some of the things that resonated for me. They're kind of like lessons learned as I went on the journey of picking up social marketing and wanting to become a social marketer in the environment space. I'm sorry, also losing my voice. I was in Spain like a week ago for the World Social Marketing Conference and lost my voice, and it's still not quite back. So I'll see if I can get through this to be able to speak. This is one of the top things. Assuming awareness leads to action. There's a massive gap, as you guys probably know, between what we think and what we know and what we do. And that's called the knowledge deficit gap. Like where we think if someone needs to take a specific action, we just tell them they need to do it and why, and they're going to be able to. But that doesn't happen for a number of reasons. Has anyone seen this before? The cognitive bias and heuristics. There's a lot of things going on in our mind that sort of affect our behavior. Some happen at the automatic level, and it's kind of ridiculous, but these things are affecting our behavior and what we do, whether we want to or not. There's a lot of great books out there that like popularizing the cognitive psychology that this is based on, that affects whether or not we actually do the behavior that we know is best to do. And also the system stuff too, like all these different levels and influences that are happening around the individual. It's not just what's at the individual, but it's other things like groups, culture, and then the macro level, society. So there can be structural barriers, there can be inequities at play that affect whether or not someone can actually take action to do whatever behavior. Well, so I like this example. I always like to share this. This is a classic one. You know this one, right? So you've probably seen anytime you go to a hotel and they're saying, don't put your towel on the ground, reuse it. And they tested some different messages. And one was just to help save the environment, general message. The second one was join your fellow guests. And then the amount there, almost 75%, the rest participated. And this one's different in the sense that 75% who stayed in the room participated. So what do you think, which one do you think is most effective? Like 1, 2, 3? Yes. Okay. So when it was referenced the specific room that the person was in, people reuse their towels more, like statistically more. So that's the social norms, really. We're most likely to be influenced by the behavior of those we perceive to be more like ourselves. So this has a lot to do with our behavior as well. And you may have seen this model too. It's a sort of adapted version of the fusion of innovation. This is where the tipping point concept comes from. So anytime there's like a new innovation or product in the marketplace, there's gonna be those early adopters, right? Like the people stay in line for the iPhone and they take it on. Then there's people at the other end of the spectrum, the laggards, who are just probably gonna be late or never to that innovation. Then majority in the middle there. And looking at approaches for behavior change, the innovator group, they might be okay with just education, like they can be told this is what you can do and they'll do it. And then on the other end, again, the make me, they're gonna just require laws. That's what's gonna take for those people. But the middle group, where most people exist, they benefit from help and support and taking the barriers and reducing those and enhancing the benefits that we know from the formative research we do in marketing. So that's the group that could potentially benefit from social marketing approaches. But the problem is we tend to have disproportionate effort in what we spend our time and investments on. We put a lot of work into information education and regulation laws, those things. Whereas the social marketing approach, it is more time intensive and can be more resource intensive, but you tend to have better outcomes, whereas not 100% with those on the other end. Education campaigns aren't entirely effective. That's not going to be sufficient for most people. Same with laws. One of the studies from our center where they compared using marketing strategies versus just communications only had 100% versus 60% positive change for outcomes. So it's very compelling stuff there. And who's seen your bill for your energy, the little smiley faces? This is social norms. And it's a great case study too. This is another classic one from O-Power. And when they were doing just the showing you where you fit in on your energy use, and if you were lower than your neighbors, actually it was causing people to, oh, I can use more energy, and it was like a boomerang effect. So that was not great. But when they introduced the smiley face, like that's actually good, like you want to stay there, that kept people from going in the opposite direction. So they reduce their energy. And that's that there's different types of norms. That's injunctive, which means it's the approval of other people that are like them. So this is like kind of using norms for positive behavior change. And I also mentioned too that just education and information stuff like pamphlets by themselves might not be effective, but when they're informed by like this type of research and figuring out what the norms are, what people support, it can be a lot more effective. So this is an example of a campaign in San Diego all about water quality and trying to get people to scoop the poop from their dogs. And putting in this 70% are doing the right thing. That's enhancing the norm, amplifying the norm, and showing people what is the desired behavior, and then other people approve it. And also the why, the benefits are there outlined because they found that was meaningful to people. And using the research insights, this was a cool study where the Girl Scouts went out, interviewed people, got survey data, and then having things like prompts. The poo points, that was where the waterways were, there was more of like a hot spot. So if the poop isn't scooped there, it was going to end up in the creek and get to the ocean. So things like that can inform a campaign. This can inform the types of materials that we put together. This is another one, assuming we're like our audience. And for people like myself with my background in science and conservation, this was tough because a lot of times we create things based on what we think other people think based on what we think. And I'm going to show this example here. So thoughts on that one? So yeah, it could be jarring, especially if you don't eat seafood or animals. But this is based on research and the fact that people who have lawns and they're trying to reach people who have lawns to change their fertilizer practices, they care about the seafood, that whether or not you're going to have seafood. So that resonated with people and that structured the campaign. And that's actually an Australia version based on an original one from like, I think it's like 2005 or something. So this goes back a ways in the US. There's another great website I'll point you to, Tools of Change, lots of cool case studies, how the tools are used, projects. And this is a research paper based on where that PSA originated from. So yeah, that's a good example of, okay, that's a water quality focused thing, but it's not talking about, say, the water quality. It's right there. And similarly, we have, does anyone have a dog and participate in Dog Fest? You have? Okay, cool. So you may have seen the Dog Fest public event for people with dogs. And this is based on koala conservation. And this goes back years from our center. And the fact that dogs are one of the causes of mortality to koalas, so dog attacks. And it's easily addressed by training your dog. And we found that people do see the benefits of training their dog. And so having wildlife aversion was something we wanted to fold in. And people wanted fun, engaging activities for the family. So this is a event that's really about koala conservation, but it's centered on dogs and people with dogs and family events and getting their dogs beneficial training. So it's one of those things where we could talk about koalas, but not everyone wants to hear necessarily about koalas, and this resonated with the audience. So that's the approach we've been doing for years. And this is another insight that you tend to see, and I think I referred to this earlier. In social marketing, there's no such thing as like a general audience, that's the public. We have to segment, we have to look at it that way. And this is some of the earlier research that supported our koala work. And taking survey data and co-design data and figuring out from the demographics and what people say they would do and are willing to do, and also looking at some of the psychographic variables there, they're able to identify several different groups, and each group has their own characteristics and then different strategies that are indicated for reaching that group. And this one is kind of what we're working on now. The work I'm doing is focused on citizen science. So I was going to, I know time-wise, not doing the best, but I'll share a little bit about our project and I can answer questions too. But we started an ARC linkage project this year with the team from University of Sunshine Coast and Redland City Council. Oh, this is like a week, 2 weeks ago, we actually won an award for this abstract. I presented this in Spain for World Social Marketing Conference. So this will be like a quick version of it. So we have been working with Redland City Council and they have a citizen science program. And a big part of it is teaching people how to identify sick koalas so they can report them through the mobile app. And as well as just generally citizen science helping researchers know where koalas can be found, their movements and all that. So some of our research went back to 2022. We have an annual survey, other research I did, but found out that a lot of people aren't actually submitting koala sightings. They launched their program in 2020, and not the best time to launch a program, but still. And a lot of people didn't understand what were the signs of a sick koala, the things that they're being asked to report. So that sort of structured our project, doing formative research, which then just led to us starting this project with USC and Redland City Council. And they are developing a new Bluetooth ear tag. So when the koalas are rehabbed and released back into the wild, volunteers can track them using a new mobile app that's still in development and some cool equipment. And so we're trying to develop this project, and our role is to pilot community engagement strategies to improve the retention and the volunteer engagement. So that's what we're doing now. It's still kind of early on, but it was informed by interviews, surveys, field observations. We did 2 different forms of participatory research, co-design, design thinking, and all sort of based on the COM-B model for behavior change, looking at opportunity, capability, motivation as important for leading to behavior. So we went out and we saw what people were doing to lead citizen science efforts and how they're using the mobile app and their experiences. And we did a lot of interviews with people from kind of like a segmentation up front with different amounts of experience and surveys they'd done. Some people that had never done a survey or just did one, why did they continue, why did they not continue in the program? And talk to citizen science folks from around the world too. And with co-design, we basically got folks in a room together to have them develop a program that they thought would be useful for them to get involved and help them report koala sightings. And we also use design thinking, which is a little bit more extensive and bringing people together with specific stakeholder expertise, as well as volunteers and community members, and take them through a series of activities. There was a paper that just came out, you'd be able to stay on that if you're interested. And they develop their own ideas and prototypes, strategies that can then be voted on and iterated. And in the end, you have some potential strategies that can be piloted out in the real world. So a couple things that we found over the couple of years of doing this, between all those research methods, and this won't be like groundbreaking or anything for those who do citizen science stuff, but the tech was really critical, having good tech and that's simple and user friendly, otherwise people are just gonna be gone. Feedback, really important. People wanted to hear that what they were doing is making a difference and that they're appreciated by the program managers and so forth. Also the importance of proactive hands-on education and training. So being able to actually do what you're asked them to do and report on. And then people want social opportunities, they want to have fun, they want to do with other people, compare notes, get out there together and do the citizen science stuff. And incentives matter, number 5. This was a little counterintuitive when you're talking about this iconic species. You think everyone wants to get involved, do citizen science with koalas, but not necessarily. A lot of the co-design groups are saying, how about some incentives like gamification elements or like coupons or whatever, like external reward type stuff. And this is what my colleague who wasn't able to join us today, Sheikh Bir Rahman, this is his PhD. So he's looking at gamification in conservation. And so hopefully next year he'll be on the docket and he'll be able to come and speak to you more details about that. But back in September, they ran a BioBlitz on our campus and a lot of people got involved. And as part of that, his research, he's looking at when you add the competitive challenges and those external rewards, does that increase participation and so forth. So stay tuned on that. We'll see how that all comes together. And then finally, collaboration and coordination, really critical. That was something that came up a lot. There's a lot of different efforts out there, different koala groups, different apps. People were confused. People want to see things that brought together. And a lot of stuff happening here, but this is our project now. We're still in the recruitment stage of trying to get people involved. And eventually we'll take people from the Koala Watch program Redlands has to Koala Guardians. It's a little bit more involved for them. And we'll do some more co-design, and we've identified all sorts of monitoring and evaluation metrics that we'll be able to roll out and use to see if these strategies are working. And this is sort of underlined by our theory of change with the COM-B model I mentioned before, and then the EAST model by the Behavioral Insights team, that things need to be easy, attractive, social, and timely. So if those things are in place, are we going to see more engagement? And all the different types of opportunities we're offering people, if they're participating in more of these, if there's incentives in the mix, are you going to see more involvement and retention too? So we're just starting out. So the Redlands folks did take some of our initial research insights on board. We have a new app that's supposedly more user-friendly, some materials out there. There's a dashboard with the data to present back to the community, what they're submitting, that they can see the results and look up data about koalas. So eventually, we hope that people will be able to go out with this like super expensive gear and a new app and track specific koalas in their neighborhood that are released. So this is where we're at now. We're kind of moving from there. We had the Family Koala Fair back in September, and this was an opportunity to share about how people could get involved. We did some surveys, as you can imagine, like embedding the research in there. We showed people the new dashboard. We also had some incentives in the mix too. So a quick look at some of the stuff we're asking people, because we're trying to measure and track their confidence in doing the actual thing that we're asking them to do for the reporting. So self-efficacy, behavioral intentions, the probability of whether they would take part in this, and then response efficacy. Do they think it's making a difference? So we are going to be tracking that. And we did embed some incentives to do our survey, and we had people go into a raffle to win a koala spotting kit with binoculars that we thought would also help them do the behavior, because those koalas can be way up there and hard to see. It's hard to tell if they have diseases. So we have that as part of the thing. And penetration and probability, that's something else we want to see, like who's already doing it, how much is it already being done as far as submitting koala sightings. And if people said they would, we asked them if we could follow up in however many months. So we're gonna be following up longitudinally 3-6 months, and then a year later and see how it went, ask them for feedback and all that. And even further, we know there's data about commitments and goal setting. If you're out there making a public and durable pledge or setting a goal, you're more likely to do the behavior. So that plus other things that we're trying to support, having the social opportunities, giving them binoculars, whatever it might be, all those things that we hope to roll out, have the Redlands folks roll out as part of their program. Will that make a difference? So we asked them, okay, when are you going to go koala spotting? Can we follow, and when can we follow up with you about that? So we hope that a few months from now, after the new year, we'll be able to get some insights from folks. We did already have one N equals 1 so far, someone who won the binoculars. This is Georgia, and her son saw the binoculars at our Family Koala Fair, wanted to enter the drawing. They entered, she won, and she also won a ticket to our annual Change conference. And I got this photo not too long ago of them out koala spotting. So I thought I'd end on that note of this was a little uplifting, positive result there from giving away binoculars. And yeah, so this is some of the stuff we do at our center. We have master classes and trainings. I am putting together a conservation marketing one with a colleague of mine in June. So if you're interested, we have this happening. We also have our Change conference too. So ways to connect with us at our center, and we're always happy to collaborate too. So if you want to talk about anything we can work on together, always happy to do that. And yeah, that's my quick whirlwind of background in social science and social marketing.
All right, we're gonna have time for questions. So if anyone would like to raise their
Okay, Alex, the first one.
Oh, sure.
I found it always tricky to identify behavior we want to focus on. You know, for carbon conservation, you can engage with landowners to the carbon consumption, or you can engage like citizens to report the state laws. So I always found it tricky to work out the penetration, like how many people are doing that, and the probability, how likely you can convince the private landholders to confidence. And in conservation, we always struggle with limited resourcing, how to maximize the return on investment. So from your experience with working on so many projects, any sort of ideas that can pass?
Okay,
Yeah.
so the
Yeah.
question is how to,
Yeah, like identify the behaviors targets. You have limited resourcing.
yeah, like that's actually, sometimes I've seen that behaviors are sort of already identified for you in projects, maybe it's an RFP or grant, and so you know that's what you're targeting. But if you go to Doug McKenzie Moore's training, have you done this, Jeff? They'll have a whole thing where before you even get into something, figure out the right behavior to work on. And you look at stuff like what's the impact of that behavior and all that stuff about probability, penetration. So if it's something that people are already doing, don't focus your efforts on it. But then you also look at the probability, like the likelihood that they would do it. So if it's something that people are saying, no, I will never do that, you're not convincing me. Like in another project I was working on was like cat management in Hawaii. One of the behaviors was wearing your cat in a backpack. No one will do that. So don't focus on that. So the research showed us that. So yeah, and some are really tricky. So I think that's where you just get the co-design and the community participatory research, and you talk to your audience and you ask them, and maybe you're finding like the spokespeople in the community and the people like, so you can like engineer the social norms and figure out like if you have people already doing it, amplify that. But yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah.
So yeah, figure out
quite
the best
complex.
behavior.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I think for the audience, there's no general audience. Some identify consumer group for handlings.
Yeah.
It's very hard. You might think, oh, this person could be, for example, wealthy or whatever, maybe middle-aged or maybe like business setting. But how my marketing can reach to them. So the channel, which channel is
Yeah.
effective reaching to them, and find out even like Rite Aid or WF, they do a lot of big advertisement board at airports, train station, but are these people like the hardcore consumers are really looking at that?
Yeah,
So
that's-
very interesting, real world conservation challenge. We're always talking to people who are already early adopters, sort of
Right.
majority, but actually those hardcore wildlife consumers, they are the one causing the demand for those wildlife products.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's a very hard question. I never
It
got an
is.
answer. Maybe us.
Oh gosh, I don't know. I'm still early in
Yeah.
doing all things
Yeah.
too, but a lot of times too, you just have to figure out what the right communications channels are, like maybe, and that's where the consumer research comes into play too. And what are the trusted sources with the messengers? Like you might find that your audience is not on social media, so you're not going to advertise to bring them in via social media. You're not going to use that. Maybe there's like trade magazines that this is what you get from like this immersing the community and asking quick questions and you find out. Or maybe it's just like it's a fishing group and they're going to the fishing hall and you just do something monthly and you go to them. And that's something too that I've seen elsewhere is oftentimes we're asking people to come to us. So anytime we can go to them better or make it easier for them to participate. Like I've seen some great examples in Pacific Northwest where the Transit Association was doing some co-design or whatever it was they were doing. And they were giving out like bus passes and helping people with childcare so that they could then participate in research. And with the stuff we do, we incentivize participation too. So people who do our co-design, they'll get like a $50 or $100 gift card. So recognizing the value of their time. So that helps too. And then you get people who aren't necessarily, you get a range of people. So you don't always want like the super engaged people. That's your ultimate audience. But yeah, it's very challenging. And this for me, going from how I used to do things in conservation all this many years to the marketing stuff was very revelatory.
I follow up on that point right there. I'm curious, what is the most challenging thing from your background that to adapt? Because I come from marketing and psychology, so
Yeah.
and this audience is
Opposite.
more of the environment side, so they'd probably share that with you. So I'm curious, what is the
Yeah.
most challenging thing?
I mean, I think basically, because I didn't have any marketing background, and for me, this was like, wow, this is so cool. This is really neat. And the social science integration. So I think sort of backing into learning all the marketing stuff and some of that decoupling of that sort of impulse to be like, well, this is what I think, this is what we should be doing, and this is how I'm gonna communicate it to people. And sometimes you just have to like release yourself from any of that stuff, the assumptions and all that too. And it's like, it's really not about us. And we know the facts, we know the statistics, we know why the biodiversity crisis, we know all that stuff, but we could do stuff for the community that doesn't even mention biodiversity or the issue, and that's fine. So I think getting that internalized and communicating that to other people is kind of challenging, because we always feel like, yeah, we need to tell them, like, if you don't do this, they won't have any forests, you know, like, or you could just focus on the fact that people want a happy, healthy place to live for their family. So, and we see that with climate change communication a lot too, like take that, especially in the US, like take the word and we don't necessarily need to use that. So there's, I think that's one of the key takeaways.
It's a great marketing professor that says you don't advertise salad that it's meatless.
Yeah.
It's a way of like, you're trying to encourage people to eat less meat, but you don't advertise salad on that basis. You advertise it on freshness and tastiness and all sorts of other things, right? And that's the marketing pragmatic approach.
We have a lot of that in our center too, working on food, and it's critical. It's like, it's this, when I first learned about social marketing, it's the same set of principles and approaches, and you can apply it to any different context. So just keeping those things in mind, this framing and applying the research insights, and remembering your single audience, not themselves. So that can be tough.
This is just sort of following on these questions. I guess I'm curious, what are the groups you said, like 16% are in the education, you just tell them and they agree and they want to do it anyway, so they're gonna do it. 68% is the 68% you're working with. Is there work on how to move people between those?
Yeah.
Right, like what causes somebody to be receptive in general to the original argument of just like morally, like you should save the blue crab?
Right.
Right, like is there mobility between those two, or it's just a general fact, it's always gonna be like that, you lose some and you gain some?
Yeah, like I think that's where the research insights come in, because like that diffusion of innovations, the idea is there's people who have different motivations, and they'll take on the behavior for different reasons and at different times and with different prompts. So it's figuring out like what that, say your middle group that maybe they weren't totally thinking about it, but with this support, then they will. So it's figuring out what that is. So it might not necessarily be like your laggards are gonna come on board because of this, but what is it for them that will resonate? So yeah, it could be, we don't even know. Sometimes it's stuff that comes out like from the research that makes a difference for someone. And like I was saying too before, like sometimes a lot of that has a social factor, so you can figure out who the meaningful people are to those groups, and then have them see those people taking on behavior. And then also like structuring the environment. So what kind of, like if it's for instance, like you want people to ride their bike to work instead of driving, and maybe I'll be able to get past the fact that there's no showers or there's no bike lanes. Some people can do it, but you might have to make changes in the environment too for the other people who are like, no, that needs to happen. So there's some people get around those horrible barriers and challenges, the early adopters, and then other people need more direct support, and whether it's social, whether it's structural, whether it's a mix of that, and you can find that out from the research. So hopefully the breadth of research to tell you like this will resonate with that.
Generally in the pro-environmental sphere, like all the things that we're trying to target, those people in that early adopter group tend to be highly environmentally identified, right? So they have strong values related to protecting and caring for the environment. So you can usually just tap into that in the first instance, but then once you start getting into this next group, those values and motivations can get a little bit more diffuse. So it's trying to work out what is that gets them now up into this group. And then those last groups, they're basically just following a trend. They're just doing it because we've reset the norm, right? We've just reset what is accepted and appropriate in terms of this behavior. And then there might be those couple of people like really, the only thing you're gonna have to, and even then, like, you know, even in regulating, it's not just enough to set the regulation. It has to be like actively enforced, it has to be visible, like it's not even enough, like often when we're working in governments, they establish these regulations under the assumption that just making it will change people. And that's an incorrect assumption as well. It's not enough to just set the regulation, you're effectively just putting in an injunctive norm that no one will follow unless, you know, you're punishing them, less than ideal because you can get backlash effects.
Yeah.
Or it becomes really visible, or you're setting up other people to say, you know, this is, we approve of this is the new standard by which we behave. So if you can't go and do all the research, because sometimes you can't, right? Like
Reality,
the reality of is it like, you know, often appealing to people's in that first group, their sense of identity or, you know, these values around protecting nature can usually get them on board, and that's where education aid can work. But the problem is most of them are already doing it already, and that's what Liz was saying in terms of like got to understand this penetration, and like otherwise we're reaching a saturated audience, you know, and we're wasting our time as well.
And to reflect on the data, so 2018, Matthew Slinsky published a paper. So they reviewed how many behavior science paper published in the leading conservation journal. Guess the percentage, 0.28%. So it's not even have those empirical studies to inform how can we have effective messaging. So like best strategies, I think. Hope CBCS and the marketing purpose we're gonna make more empirical studies to inform this claim.
Well, that's a good question, Liz. Like, you know, in terms of like work, because you do a lot of work with external providers, what is their willingness to have, you know, what you do like written, because they're not paying for papers, right? Like written up and evaluated. Like, what's your experience in this space with working with external people in terms of their willingness to like put this into the empirical literature?
That's a great question. And one of my side projects I've been working on as well is academic practitioner collaboration, having come from a practitioner background and seeing like some examples of great practitioner publishing in journals. That is so not the norm. It's not the norm. Yeah, and a lot of times, like even in the practitioner side, we're not publishing even anywhere. So it doesn't get out there. It's maybe like a government report or not even necessarily conference talk. So I think we need more support for that. It's a terrible challenge. Like the tools of change in the CBSM websites, those are good starting points. Like I'll send people there because sometimes people will put their stuff on that, but it's still an effort that it's hard when you're time poor, like most of us, and you only have this much time to do this many things. Just gotta get the report out the door, move on to the next thing. So it really is a challenge, and I don't know, I'd like to see more collaboration where maybe we find the what's in it for me for like early career PhD students could help practitioners write up their results and get their stuff out in case study journals as well as peer reviewed journals too. So another, not just academic lit as well. That's another thing. It's who's reading those, right? Like you get your paper out, how many people are actually reading it, especially if there's a paywall. So yeah, we need to diversify. The conversation is great. I still haven't done it myself, but has anyone published in the conversation here? Okay, cool. Because yeah, doing things like that, making the effort, finding a way, building it into your proposals too, or bringing like open access fee publication fees would be good too. So when you do get a journal, you can make it access and then you can send it, you can do the manual work, put it in your LinkedIn, send it to practitioners if it is a journal. So yeah, I agree. It's a tough one. How are people gonna learn if the stuff's not out there, especially the stuff that worked and didn't work? Both need to be conveyed, so we don't keep doing the same thing over. Like I've been 20 years in Hawaii working at conservation and seeing the same thing happening. So yeah, it's kind of discouraging, but there's a lot of systemic issues and challenges we have to solve, as well as the whole like incentives and reports and too. I think it's probably the same here. If your A-star journals, your top level journal publications, and I see the disconnect as well. If we want there, a lot of universities will say we want there to be societal impact, yet is that what we're being rewarded for through career progression? It's not always lining up. So, yeah, I could probably go on.
Question online, compliments, excellent talk, really enjoyed it. Regarding Goldstein's towel social norms experiment, I always wondered if identifiability could have been operating along with the social normative influence. That is, people might have thought their behaviour was going to be monitored or measured.
Oh yeah, that's a valid point. I'm not really sure if they address that though, if anyone is familiar with the study.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's this like with surveys, the social desirability bias, right? When you're taking a survey, like, oh, I should be doing this, I'm gonna say I did it, right? So maybe similar.
The lady would know.
Yeah, there you go.
Can I just make a
That's what we should talk about.
pedantry kind of point about social, the towel release stuff is one of the most overdone set of studies on the planet. And it's actually wrong because in psychology, it's a habit, right? And so we're treating it like a behavior that we can intentionally change. And it's actually a habit. People drop their towels without thinking, right? So all of these sort of nudge programs that are done do aim at things like social monitoring and stuff, but it's all kind of, the only people that will change are the ones that are conscious of it's actually happening. For the rest of it, so like even in your study, they said like 49% change, well the other 51% didn't even think about it.
Yeah,
Right?
that's a good point. It's still 49 out of
And there is
100, so.
There's a big difference between when
Difference,
something's a habit and when something's an intentional behavior. And so that's a real challenge for everyone in this room, is that you do need to adapt. You do need to look at behaviors you can change.
Right.
Habits are not in that category.
Yeah.
The way we think about habits.
But that, like Liz, you would have an experience too, right? Like one of the big things, particularly working with governments, is setting realistic expectations about what we can change. And sometimes a lot of the time I spend going like, you know, even if we can get like a bump of 10, 15%, that's super great to us because we have those understandings. But sometimes working with external people, they're like, yeah, we'll get everyone 100%. We're like, yeah, basically we're maximising the likelihood that you will get what you want, but the extent to which you'll get everyone, yeah, it's
That's right.
Yeah, it's not realistic.
it's not realistic.
So
So
yeah, excellent points.
All right, well, you are in Brisbane, so if anyone has follow-up questions, there's the contact, and are you at the Nathan campus?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, so
Not
come
far,
visit.
and there's koalas near your campus.
They're on their campus.
They're on your campus,
Yeah,
so you
That
could,
bio listing is really cool.
right? Yeah, and they
Actually,
do,
our campuses have that, right? The same
you have a lot of
vegetation,
impressive
we have the
things
same
with
thing.
me.
we need a koala, agreed. We can't let you win this one. Let's give her a round of applause.